Hi again. Nelson Barbour, Three Worlds, Plan of Redemption, page 124. In the prior segment we read Barbour's musings on the failure of 1843-44, the Millerite movement, and then apparently the disappointments that attached to his hopes before Charles Taze Russell got involved with his ministry, or during that period that Charles Taze Russell was getting involved in the ministry. Disappointments in 1873, 74, 75, and then this sentence at the end of the last segment: as we journey on a little further, deliverance may come any time between this and the end of the harvest in 1878. Now he takes up that subject, the harvest, its beginning and its end. The harvest is the end of the world, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn, but gather the wheat into my barn. Matthew 13. There was a harvest to the Jewish age, to which we have already referred. And that harvest began and ended with them during Christ's personal presence, and hence continued during the 3.5 years of his ministry. The harvest of this gospel age, which is also the end of this age, measures 3.5 years, as we will show. As the harvest at the first advent did not begin until Christ came, that is, began his work, for he did not come in this sense until after John's baptism, so this harvest begins with Christ's personal presence. Now, of course, that, according to their understanding, had therefore taken place in 1874. So Barbour goes on, and I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, saying with a loud voice, thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of this earth is ripe. Revelation 14, verses 14 and 15. It is true, this is symbolic language, and so is the parable of Matthew 13. But there we have the explanation that it means gathering the fruit of the gospel age. Then follows another angel, who gathers the clusters of the vine of the earth, and casts them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. It will be observed that there is order here, as in all of God's works. First, one, like the Son of Man, reaps the earth. This is the will of him that sent me, that every one which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. John 6:40. It is the dead in Christ that he gathers, while angels are to gather the tares. Although an angel cannot waken one sleeping saint or bring him from the tomb, a legion of angels cannot keep him there. The order of the harvest can be gathered from Christ's teaching in Matthew 13. And this, the revelation of Jesus Christ. Here we find the harvest begins with Christ's own personal work, alive, and let me read that again. Begins with Christ's own personal work. The dead in Christ shall rise first. Before we who are alive and remain are taken, the vine of the earth is, I like this word, is gathered. It's all broken up in the print, so excuse my poor reading of it. The vine of the earth is gathered to be cast into the winepress of his wrath. I think that's what it says. I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn. Then, after the separation of the tares and wheat is complete, the wheat is gathered, caught up together with the dead in Christ, who have been raised before, to meet the Lord in the air. The above being the order of events, it will be seen that the harvest could not have begun until Christ left the holy place, which, as has been shown in a former chapter, was due on the 10th day of the 7th month, occurring in October 1874. This fact that the end of the Ion, that is age, was due to begin in the autumn of 1874 was reached before the time of the harvest was seen. In the chapter on the equality of the two covenants, it has been shown that the time from the death of Jacob to the death of Christ was 1845 years, and that the two covenants, or dispensations, were to be of equal measure, and therefore, from the death of Christ to the end of the gospel dispensation, must measure 1845 years. And from the crucifixion in the year AD 33 to the spring of 1878 will be 1845 years. But the point I wish to show is the parallels between the harvests of the two dispensations. And let it be remembered, these arguments on the prophetic periods which determine these various dates were reached before the fact was seen that the harvest held any place in the arrangement of these time arguments. As the first dispensation measured 1845 years and ended with a harvest of 3.5 years, the duration of Christ's ministry, it follows that from where that dispensation under the 12 tribes began to where the harvest began was 1841 years and 6 months, to which we add the 3.5 years of that harvest to complete the 1845 years. Now, is it not a strange coincidence that precisely the same measurements should occur here? That is, from the spring of AD 33, where the dispensation of the gospel to all nations began, to the autumn of AD 1874, the exact point where this harvest should begin is also 1841 years and 6 months. This bare coincidence alone possibly might have been a matter of accident, but when all the other parallels named in the subject of the two covenants are remembered, and also the abundant evidence there is that there were to be of equal measure and equal size, to find a continuation of such wonderfully exact measurements is mathematical demonstration that seems almost irresistible. As from the spring of AD 33 to the autumn of 1874 is 1841 years and a half, so from the autumn of 1874 to the spring of 1878, where the 1845 full years of the gospel dispensation end, is 3.5 years, leaving the harvest of equal length with the one of the Jewish dispensation. So all of this to prove, of course, that 1878 was the absolute limit of the harvest, which of course exploded just a year after the publication of this book, and then they had to start to reshuffle all of the interpretations, but not the dates. And that's the consistent pattern right through into the 1920s with Rutherford's reign in the Watchtower. We'll put a link into our series playlist on the parables. It started with the parables anyway. YJW org will fall and the church will endure, because the two parables that we thought of first were the very one he starts with here, the sower parable, and the wheat and weeds parable, both in Matthew chapter 13. So there's several videos at the beginning of this playlist. I'll put the first of those videos up, and also the playlist itself.